There we go.
So, friends online, this is a very informal welcome. We were supposed to start about 15 minutes ago, and we'll be on stage here in the Tabernacle, but I wanted you to know somebody's here. And we'll be chatting with you and sharing some time with you in a minute.
No, it's this one.
That one.
Here, hold on.
Checking microphones. There we go. I can hear. Can you hear?
Yeah, you're good.
Yay. Okay, good. So, again, friends online, we're getting started in just a minute. Kaitlin Curtice is here, and the drum voices of Greensky Hill. And we'll do some welcome and opening prayers and stuff like that in just a minute.
If you could, when you're done, we'll just put them in the front of the book.
Yeah. Good. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm very excited. Our families, we are rock climbers, so when I travel for skiing,
next to me, okay.
For gyms or anywhere I can climb. But if I can't climb, then if I'm by water, I water. You know, so.
What's your name? I've been there. Are you coming?
I think it's supposed to be every other player.
I don't think so. I don't know. Come on.
They haven't been Michigan yet. Oh, shit. We came up with Do you live in town or nearby?
Like 12 miles south.
Okay, so not in.
Yeah, we need to put them in each book.
I don't think I've ever been to Michigan in the summer. I've been in the spring and the winter. And I saw a lot of sunflowers. Here like that. So. Yeah. Yeah, we could drove here. Yeah, it's pretty. I just wasn't expecting it, so.
For all of our friends online, get ready. This is the lemon eucalyptus oil just for you. There you go. Look at that, it's working. Not a single insect. So for the rest of you, if you want some body-friendly, if you should need a little protection from any of the little crawlers or flyers that show up sometimes in the woods, this is a Murphy's Naturals lemon eucalyptus oil. And it smells pretty good. It shouldn't damage your clothing, and it should keep the mosquitoes away if you need it. There's some up on the platform if you need it.
Oh, right up front. First row.
So it just occurred to me for our friends online that I can do this so that you can just have, you know how YouTube's been doing those Zen moments instead of commercials? There. Now you can just look up at the canopy of trees. There. Better than watching me sit on the stage. So we'll be with you in a minute.
Okay. But thank you. Yeah. It's safe for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Safe as forever. Put it on every tea.
Everyone you want.
Hey, David. Oh, you don't.
David. Great to be here. This is so beautiful.
I heard you asked if that seat was saved. You remember the old looking for it?
Oh,
Is that seat saved? No, but it's under conviction.
I know I have a joke you heard.
Oh, okay, I'd love to hear.
A guy, I know you heard. A guy painting a house. Saved money. Paint.
Right.
You know it.
I do. I heard a very elaborate version
I tell
about two brothers who did that, and then
Repaid.
repaint, then no more.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, it's a great. You can set it up
If you
forever.
tell it right.
Yeah, you can set it up forever with the steeple, and they cut it. They made a deal with the church, and then they decided to cheat the church, and then the storm came and washed the paint off the steeple, and the voice from heaven
I have the
said,
short version.
"Repaint."
My short version is, you know this joke, right?
That is far funnier.
Yeah.
Far funnier.
Good, I don't want to tell. Tell everyone.
Where are you going to came from?
Up here,
Front? Okay.
on these steps, right here. You want a chair? Are you going to sing with them?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, we'll bring you a chair.
Are we first? Are we first?
Right after the welcome.
Okay.
Right after Ren.
Right after Ren. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Molly, we'll have this here for you.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, when they come up, could you move this chair over for Molly? That'd be great.
I guess I sit.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, April. We will be officially rolling in a minute. So can you all do the first step?
I know. First step.
And then you come to the mic. You ready?
Well, no, that was
We have to move 2 minutes. So, Robin, is she going to speak the prayer and then dance?
That would work.
Yeah.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the 190th anniversary of Greensky Hill. And I don't know how many camp meetings or some version of that we've had during those 190 years, but I've only been here for half of them. So, about 215 or so years ago, a bunch of Ogamas, the family heads in this northern part of Michigan, from early Anishinaabe people, were gathering and building relationships, and they decided that they wanted to commit to a peaceful relationship and a sacred space to meet and gather where there would be no conflict. So they each planted 29 or 30 of those chiefs planted a tree in the circle at the end of this road when it curves off to the highway. And those trees were bent trees so that they would never be taken down. And the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa people, the people of the Three Fires, and the Anishinaabe people from this area, used bent trees like that to mark trails and to mark sacred spaces. And so this place that Greensky Hill sits on has always been a liminal space, a sacred space between now and then, between here and there, and what some people call a thin space. And a group of people following a Chippewa translator named Peter Greensky were doing church together on Old Mission Peninsula, and they were disinvited, which was to our blessing because they packed up, some believe, the logs of that 175 or 80-year-old church behind you. Certainly the windows and the door and many of the things that still make up that building where we gather every Sunday. And they came by canoe across the Grand Traverse Bay, up the Pine River Channel, through Round Lake into Lake Charlevoix, and somehow forded the 2 miles from there to here and built that church.
Wow.
And folks have been worshiping in that place ever since. And this year we are celebrating the year 1833, which is when Greensky Hill was officially established as a church. And a part of that celebration is this big event that has literally been years in the making. You'll meet Kaitlin Curtice in a moment. Kaitlin is a Potawatomi author who has written 3 wonderful books, and they're all available, and you can purchase them while you're here tonight, and she will sign them for you. Her first is Glory Happening, and then the wonderful book Native, Identity, Belonging, and Rediscovering God. And the book that will be the theme for this weekend, Living Resistance, an Indigenous Vision for Seeking Wholeness Every Day. And Kaitlin breaks this book into 4 realms, and she's going to take a realm per presentation, beginning tonight with the first realm, and tomorrow at 3 o'clock with a workshop focused around the second realm, and then tomorrow night at 6 we'll be back out here. And shall we try for 6 tomorrow night? There'll be food available ahead of time, and you can bring the food down here to eat, and we'll try to get started. But we're pretty flexible. And then Sunday morning, she's going to finish with the 4th realm from her book, Living Resistance. And tonight, we're expecting, I think, our former district superintendent, Jody Flessner, but I haven't seen Jody yet. If she shows up, we'll give her an opportunity to share a greeting. Tomorrow, our new district superintendent, Scott Harmon, will be here. And Sunday morning, Bishop David Allen Bard, who's the bishop of the Michigan Conference, is coming to celebrate with us. And the things that we're celebrating, I will see if I can share this in the briefest fashion ever. We received a $100,000 Sacred Spaces Clean Energy grant to electrify, get all of this campus off of propane gas and other carbon-creating energy sources, make everything more efficient, and then we're going to work with Solar Faithful to put solar panels on the top of Susan Hall. And not only the second biggest budget item for this historic church will be down to almost nothing, but our commitment to creation care and taking care of all that we've been given to walk alongside, which some people call dominion, but The Hebrew really means walk alongside creation. So that's one big thing we're celebrating. Is this Friday?
This is Friday.
As of Wednesday of this week, the long-awaited Greensky Hill Anishinaabe Conservancy is officially registered with the state of Michigan as a nonprofit whose mission is to protect this sacred land for 7 generations so that it can never be developed for anybody's personal profit. And for the first time since Greensky Hill entered into connection with a denomination, the trust clause will be removed from the church and Greensky Hill community will have its land back. And so we're about 2 weeks away from the rest of that process. And Bishop Bard has been highly instrumental and a sincere, hardworking ally in making that happen. And then the third thing that we're celebrating, and if this gets the biggest cheer, I'll have mixed emotions about it. I'm retiring. December 31st is my last Sunday, and I honestly am celebrating, and the main reason, is Sarah out here yet? Sarah Schaefer.
Right now.
She's waving. She's making her grand entrance. She learned this in licensing school. How to do the pageant wave. And, Sarah Dominic Schaefer has been chosen by the bishop and the cabinet to be the next assigned and then appointed pastor of Greensky Hill. And we are so very, very excited to have a young Anishinaabe as our next pastor. I remember when I was pastoring a church in my early 50s, and the whole congregation called me the young pastor. Sarah's actually young. All right, so those are the 3 things that we're celebrating this weekend. And it's been years because we booked Kaitlin for 2019, I think. Or no, 2020. 2020. Remember what happened in March of 2020? So we postponed to 20, to 21, to 22, and here it is, 2023, and you're here. And you know, as much as I love Native, which was going to be the theme when we first booked Kaitlin, and maybe she'll share some I'm sure she will share some insights from that book as well. Living Resistance is the book for now. Living Resistance is the book for where Greensky Hill is at in this very moment, and we have her here to talk about that book. So, in your seats nearby, you have a Greensky Hill Ojibwe hymnal. We're not going to sing anything from that book tonight, but inside there is a prayer and the hymn of promise on one side. So just this little sheet of paper, share with your neighbor if they don't have one near them, because I want to invite all of us to pray the grandfather prayer together by Keshe Yanakwan, Fast Moving Cloud. This has been an important prayer for Greensky Hill for quite a long time now, and we've been so focused on our Sunday anti-racism prayers that we've put this one aside for a little while, and we want to bring it back for camp meeting. So would you join me, if you're able, to pray the words on the printed page? Let us pray. Namada. Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We know that in all creation only the human family has strayed from the sacred way. We know that we are the ones who are divided, and we are the ones who must come back together to walk the sacred way. Grandfather, Sacred One, teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other. And Ren Gotts is going to come and lead us in an Ojibwe prayer and then do some dancing.
It's okay, Ren. You're good. You're good.
You got it. You got it.
You can introduce yourself.
Just introduce yourself and say a prayer, Ren.
Bonjour, Annie Wapshka, Jacques Christmas and East Jordan and Dunjaba. Chimagwitchkajim the domand gami shiankishika. Chimagwitchkajim the domand gami shiankishika. Chimagwitchkajim the domand gami shiankishika. Chimagwitchkajim the domand gami shiankishika.
Amen.
And you can go into your dance. What Ren said in Anishinaabe is thank you, Creator, for all of the good gifts that you've given us.
Can I?
I can move it right out of the way.
Can I move this back?
Nope.
Can we move this back? at
We
all?
can probably.
Just to let everybody see.
Yep.
Good job.
Great job. So, drum voices. Yeah. Thank you, dear.
As the drum voices of Greensky Hill gather to continue our ceremony, Ren is a competitive ring dancer and other traditional dance. I think this is probably the first time that she ever danced on wood chips. That's not the normal surface. Wonderful job, Ren. Thank you so much.
Very good. Yeah.
I have to use the mic. Is Sarah, you still here? Cool. To honor you're taller than me. To honor this being the 190th year of Greensky Indian Mission Church here, and the passing of the mantle, the chalice, whatever you call it, from Jonathan to you. My friend Babs Young, I brought her out here and she took this beautiful picture of the old graveyard. And I'm giving it to Greensky. And I wanted you both to see this incredible picture that Babs Young.
So
Beautiful. That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And it just rained. We came out here on a Sunday morning. Want to stand next to me, Robin? There are a couple girls who want to come drum with us. Cool.
We have Sarah and we have Hunter.
Sarah and I go back a ways.
And their grandmother is brought in here, Brenda Schoolcraft. She's helped with people before, so we're grateful.
Been here. It's joy. We're going to do, you got to spread out a little bit. I'm going to get Robin to take my drum. I'm a lefty.
you going to do another? Yep, she's right there. Hunter's right there.
No, the other one.
Oh, where did Farrah?
Will you come join us for the song of the Micmac Water Song? And you caught that a few years ago. You know this song too. Come join us. We're doing the Micmac Water Song. Okay? Right? Thank you.
Thank you, sisters.
You're going to sit right there.
Kaitlin, we'll have you come right up.
Very good.
I guess I was hoping that eventually. I forgot where we're sitting.
So, I didn't follow Ren's good example earlier and introduce myself. I'm Reverend Jonathan Mays. I'm the pastor of Greensky Hill for the last 10 years, and this is my successor in about 5 months. If you haven't met Sarah Dominic Schaefer, this is Sarah. Greet everybody.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a beautiful, warm welcome. I've been just overjoyed to be part of this community and this family for so many years, in a role of a kind of family and youth lead, and of course different roles before that throughout my walk. But it's funny because I was kind of joking earlier with some of you that if it was about our timing when all this happened, this probably wouldn't be when I would have planned all of this in the middle of my big catering season, right? But it's about God's timing, and I promise there's going to be a good sermon coming about that. So thank you very much. I'm just so happy to be able to continue to grow with you all, and I just look forward to getting to know each and every one of you a little bit deeper.
All right.
And we welcome Kaitlin Curtice, and we're all going to get to know her now as she shares with us from Living Resistance.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Bonjour, Kaitlin Curtice, Indigenous Hospital, Yandao.
My name is Kaitlin. I'm a citizen of the Potawatomi Nation, and I'm so happy to finally be here with all of you.
All right.
So we're going to spend a lot of time this weekend journaling together for people who like to journal. If you don't like to journal, you don't have to. If you like to just sit and think and imagine and dream, I want you to do that. I want you to just have space to ask questions and to just be present to your own life and your own heart. I want this time to be a space of connection. Like Jonathan shared, I'm going to be going through these realms of my book, these realms of resistance, and I'll explain this card in a few minutes, but this is a cyclical framework that I designed for my new book, and it's meant to be shared, and it's meant to help us understand our own life journey better. And so I'm really excited to share that with you. So tonight we'll be in the personal realm, which is our first realm of resistance, and I'll explain a little bit more. I want to start with a poem. I always like to begin my talks with poems because it's kind of just a moment to take a deep breath. So this is a poem from my book. What is a poem? It is the quietest, softest part of you, held to an invisible microphone, held up to the light, held up beyond the hustle and bustle of the day and the groaning aches of the night. A poem is the anger that releases itself in your time of greatest need, when you are ready to fracture before you believe again, ready to break open and receive yourself to yourself. A poem is the whisper that tells everything, the secret that cannot be denied. You are exactly as you've always been. Beloved word, spoken self, relieved ache, tender child. The poem is you. It always was.
Nice. Beautiful.
So throughout these talks, I'm going to be reading from my book. You can see all the pages I've marked. So I'm going to be reading to you. I'm going to be telling some stories, sharing a lot of kind of some of the behind the scenes of this book in my life as a writer, as a Potawatomi woman. I'm just really excited to share this space with you. And so my book, the subtitle for this book is An Indigenous Vision for Seeking Wholeness Every Day. And so much of my writing and my work is about healing, and it's about story, the power of story, and the power of leaning into our stories and each other's stories in a way to find more healing and wholeness in this world. And so, like I shared, the book is organized into these 4 parts. And it may remind you a bit of the medicine wheel. That certainly is a part of my journey and my life and culture. And so I wanted to create another cyclical framework that was a little different than that, but that people could have a visual as they read the book. And so I spread the cards out. I couldn't put one in every chair, but I think I have more in my bag. So if you want one later and don't want to share, you can come find me. But this is the cover of the book. It was done by Alana Jewell, who is an Indigenous designer and artist who's incredible. And so these are the realms of resistance. And you'll see on the back of the card, I explain each one. There's the personal realm, which is red, and it's to represent our lifeblood, our connection to our day, our center, our heart. It's the season of winter. It's the time when we go inward and ask questions and process. And that's where we're going to be spending our time tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to also be in the communal realm. This is brown. It represents Aki, dirt or earth. It's the time to honor our connection to the land. This is the time of solidarity and community and our connection to the earth, and the time of planting, the time of spring. And then we're going to spend some time tomorrow evening in the ancestral realm. And the ancestral realm is Mbish, water, and it represents this fluid time we live in between, those who came before us and those who come after us. We live in this liminal space. And then at the very center is the integral realm, and that's what we'll cover on Sunday morning when I speak. And that is yellow, it is autumn, and it represents our shkode, our fire. And that's kind of how do we integrate all of this? How do we bring that to the center of who we are? How do we dream and hope for a better world? So I want to read to you a little bit from the book. I wrote a book about resistance, which is We have these sort of buzzwords every now and then that come up, and I think resistance is one of them, and I like to take words like decolonization or resistance or all these kinds of popular words and sort of stretch them and look at them from different angles and ask questions. And I love to do that through my books and with my readers. And so this idea of resistance, we're asking what resistance is about and what are we resisting. And so for the sake of this book and my work, I'm asking how can we use our lives to exert energy against the dangerous status quo of our time, whatever that might be, hate or racism or violence against so many different people on this earth, violence against the earth herself. So we're asking how can we use our lives to push energy against that dangerous, violent way of being in the world, and how can we actually create beauty from that in the meantime. And so that's a little bit about the book, and I want to read you just a section of the introduction. This is like a note I wrote to the reader. Dear reader, feeler, explorer, unlearner, and friend, I want you to remember something really important as you read this book. You are a human being. You have not yet arrived, but you are continually arriving. The thing about being human is that we are born, we live, we grieve, we celebrate, and one day we pass on, becoming ancestors and guides to those who come after us. One of the most painful things I notice in my work is that people are scared to start the journey of transformation because they don't know when they will be done. They think a week of reading the right books will get them there, only to find out that is not enough. They believe that following the right people on Instagram or Twitter will alleviate them of ignorance, but it doesn't. So they give up. They stop reading the books. They go back to whatever status quo they held on to, assuring themselves that change isn't really possible, or that the effort isn't worth it in such a hopeless world. We forget that living is our actual adventure, the flesh and blood and spirit with which we journey the earth together into the life that waits after this one. It all matters. So take a deep breath as you read this next line or hear this next line. You are a human being. You are always arriving. You are a human being. You are always arriving. And that's sort of the medicine that I gave to this book, is that phrase. I wrote it for myself. I wrote it for you. I wrote it for all of us, for everyone who reads my words. So I shared these realms are arranged by color and by season. And as I'm reading to you, as I'm sharing, just remember these realms are meant to reflect the gifts of Sigamakwe, of Mother Earth. And this is beautiful to get to sit outside and just be. So as I'm reading, if you feel like you need to walk around and listen and move, please do so. I really want you to do what you need to do in this space and this weekend. Tomorrow for the workshop, we'll be doing a lot of guided journaling, a lot of time and discussion with each other, and then we'll spend time outside just reflecting. And I know there are bags up there. I don't know if everyone got one, but I think there's journals in those bags too. So even tonight, I'll stop us, I'll ask a question, we'll sit for a minute, we can think, you can draw, you can walk around, do whatever you need to do. But I love to sort of pause in the midst of what I'm saying and sharing, just to have us take a breath and then keep going. So let's do that now. Let's pause. Take a breath. Center yourself. What idea or word or image comes to your mind when you think of your own life, of your own journey, your specific life? Just think for a minute, is there an image, a phrase that kind of sums up who you are, who you feel like you are in this world? As we move through these realms, I hope that with each one we move through, you feel sort of empowered and encouraged in your own story and your own journey. And tonight is about the personal. It's about things like self-love and embodiment and presence. It's a section of the book I wrote, again, for myself to remember what my resistance journey has meant, in hopes that others will have space to process their own. So as we go into this personal realm, I thought I would just tell you a little bit more about me, about my family and my life. to give you context about even being in the Great Lakes, being in this area of the country is always really special for me. We talk about the three fires and the Potawatomi people. In 1838, there was a forced removal in Indiana of a group of Potawatomi people, and they were forced to walk for about 2 months from Indiana to Kansas. And I was born in Oklahoma, so there was a group of Potawatomi people that were forced to walk to Kansas, to a home they had never been to, never known. Many died. They had to figure out how to live in a completely new place, a completely new environment. And then a group of them broke off and went to Oklahoma. And that is my lineage on my dad's side, and where I was born in Ada, Oklahoma. And in Shawnee, Oklahoma is the sort of the capital of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. And there are, of course, Potawatomi bands all over. So it's always really special for me to come to the Great Lakes, because I didn't grow up really hearing stories about this place and these waters. And so it means a lot to me as an adult to come and relearn the stories of the Potawatomi people and the Anishinaabe people, and reorient myself and give myself permission to step into my own story as an adult, because I couldn't control what I did or didn't learn as a child due to colonization. So I'm just really grateful to be here. So I was born in Oklahoma. I was born in an Indian hospital. I was born 9 years after my sister and 7 after my brother. And we had a home that was full of fake news shows and comedy sketches. We watched a lot of TV. We listened to a lot of music. My father was a musician. My mom worked for a hospital. And my father worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He was a police officer. And so that meant that as a kid, we moved a lot. And we would move from like Oklahoma to New Mexico. And then we moved back to Oklahoma. And then we'd move back to New Mexico. And so we lived in a lot of different places. And then when I was about 8 years old, we moved to Missouri. And that was a very different experience than Oklahoma or New Mexico. So moving to Missouri, to a very small town, a very mostly white town, and a very conservative Christian town. I grew up going to church. My mom would take us often. We went to Baptist churches, so grew up with a very strong Baptist tradition in my family. But moving to Missouri was sort of a different experience, because it was a Midwest experience. And when I was 9, my dad left. And so there's just a lot of unnamed trauma. There's a lot of pain in my family that's just not spoken of. And part of my journey is healing that for myself, for my kids. So my parents got divorced, and my dad moved to Oklahoma. And I was 9 years old, so it was a very pivotal time for me. And a few years later, my mom got remarried to a Southern Baptist pastor. Very sweet man, but he was deeply embedded in this church life. And so as a 11, 12-year-old girl, I needed a safe place. I was looking for that, and so church became that for me. So I became the poster child of a pastor's kid, and I wanted to be a famous worship leader, and I dove into leadership. I went on the missions trips. I did all of it. And I was so deeply tender, but deeply embedded, and had no idea of the assimilation that was happening in me and in my own story, and the shame that no one necessarily said to me, but it's internalized by the ways that I was learning about who God is, who God isn't, and what it means to be Potawatomi. There just weren't conversations of safety for me to figure that out. So yeah, it's been a lot of back and forth of trauma and healing, and trying to understand my own journey. This is a little bit about my personal realm. This is why I focus so much on healing the relationship to our younger selves, which we can do forever, and at any age. This is always something we're going to be doing, is healing that relationship to who we used to be, to connecting to the stories of who we are as children. One of the things I focus on in the book, I want to read you a little bit, is I write about art. So the next chapter in the book after the introduction is writing about art as resistance. And this was really powerful for me to write about because, I'm a writer, and so it's heavy for me. I want to make sure that, the words that I write, paying attention to what they mean and what they speak into the world, because we know that words have power. So I want to read a little bit from this section on how art is resistance. Art isn't just for entertainment. It's also a way of being in the world. As we engage with the personal realm, our focus is on how resistance works in our personal lives. This happens on the macro level and on the micro level, inviting creativity on every spectrum. So however you are an artist, and yes, you are, whether you realize it or not, your art can help you process the world. Asha Frost, who is an Indigenous author and medicine woman, has a book called You Are the Medicine. And she says, "The fire is lit. The ancestors are here. Your medicine is calling. Let us open our space." Art heals us both individually and communally. But for our own sake, art is a tether, a reminder of what resistance means for our personal lives. Throughout history, people have expressed who they are through their art. Stories, paintings, carvings, statues, sculptures, music. Art is literally everything that we are. And when things get hard, art holds us together. So just thinking about the power of art and what Asha wrote about our medicine. So take a moment and think about this for yourself. What is your medicine? What is your medicine in the world? What is a thing that you can give to the world, just you? In other words, what are you called to? How do you move in the world? How do you create beauty?
Take care of the puppy. I'll see you.
You can carry that question with you. So what else happens in this personal realm? We examine our story, which can really be painful in a lot of ways. We're trying to heal from our trauma. We're trying to ask questions, and we're trying to learn to love ourselves better. There's a chapter in my book about radical self-love as a form of resistance. And radical self-love is not the same as self-care. We talk about self-care a lot, but it can get dangerous because self-care has become very popular, and it can often get swallowed up by consumerism and capitalism. And if we're not careful, it becomes this problem where we have to buy our self-care. And that's not the same thing as investing in self-love and the radical act of doing that, which can be so difficult and beautiful and painful. There's an author named Najwa Zebian, and she has a book called Welcome Home. And she talks about how self-love is a room that we must enter in ourselves every day. It's a place that we need to visit often. She says, self-love is an integral part of your everyday life, not a luxury you treat yourself to every once in a while. So put real work into giving yourself what you need. In my early 30s, there were just a lot of things that I wasn't really taught to pay attention to. My body's responses to trauma, or the ways that I was people-pleasing, or the ways I didn't really have good boundaries in my personal or work life, or how I was entering this room of self-hate and shame instead of self-love. So I want to take a moment and examine this for all of us. I want to think about if we can sort of pack up that room of self-hate or shame inside ourselves and move to a different room, to a room of self-love. And I want to do an exercise that I love to do, and we're actually going to do it every session. So if you're here, we're going to be doing it every time because I think it's that important. And I started doing this during COVID because I couldn't sleep. And at night, my mind was just racing and I couldn't calm it down. And so I did what I call a safe space exercise. And so I built a safe space in my mind. And I think my first one was like a shed in the woods, basically. But I've had other places. One was a cabin by the ocean. One was another area by a beach, and another place one was up in the mountains. And so it can change. It changes based on what you need. But I want us to do this exercise together. So if you're willing, close your eyes. Just take a deep breath. I want you to think about what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel whole and protected and cared for. And as you're thinking about that, begin to build that room of self-love, or that home, whatever that dwelling is. And what would you put there? Maybe there are people there with you that love you well. Who's there with you? And what are you doing in this space? Maybe you're sitting and reading a book. Maybe you're taking a nap. Maybe you're playing a game with a loved one, or you're petting a dog. What would you do in your safe space? What does it bring you? What kinds of feelings? What other senses are sort of heightened in this space? Maybe you smell a familiar smell. Or you hear a really comforting sound. Maybe if you're sitting, you have a warm blanket over your legs and it comforts you. When you're feeling stressed or worried or anxious, just stop for a minute and close your eyes and return to this place that you are imagining now. Return to how it makes you feel. And if you didn't quite come up with something, don't worry, because there have been times that I tried to come up with something and I couldn't. And that just meant that my mind wasn't quite ready to, it was a little fuzzy still. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And when we do that tomorrow, you may think of a completely different place, or the room may look different, or you might need something different in that space. And I think it's a beautiful way to gauge how we're changing and our needs are changing. Like my space changed. At some point, my mind did not want to go back to the first safe space I had created. It had moved on, and we needed something else. So that's a beautiful exercise, and it's wonderful for children as well. If you have anxious kiddos, my kids and I did it a lot. So when it comes to self-love, we have to make the space necessary to examine who we are and how we got here. And being honest with every part of who we are is really important. And this is where ritual can be really helpful. I'm sure many of us are familiar with the power of ceremony or ritual. Ritual happens, I think, even when we don't really realize it's happening sometimes. So think of a ritual, or maybe it's one you already do, but think of a ritual you could incorporate into your life. What do we need for ritual? I know that I usually need a candle. I usually need paper and a pen. I usually need like a comfortable space with a closed door to be alone. Think of what rituals you might need in this season of life that you're in. And I want to read you something from the book. This is just about a really special ritual that I created for myself a few years ago. And I just want to share it with you as kind of an idea if you need space to figure out what ritual means to you and how we learn to care for ourselves. Since my earliest years, I have been a very ritualistic person. Whether I understood it as ritual or not, I enjoyed having space to honor things in myself and around me. The more I became embedded in the Southern Baptist tradition of the faith I was raised in, the more I wandered from that ritualistic way of being. Ritual is allowed in the church, but only in the ways that fit. that are part of the atonement process to cleanse our souls from sin and embrace a certain kind of community. As much as I wanted to be close to God, I also lacked that closeness because I knew only a colonized version of God that did not value all of my questions or the nonlinear way I wanted to understand the world around me. In the last few years, I have come back to ritual again, but in my own way this time. I honor the seasons and cycles the way my Potawatomi ancestors did. I allow myself to process on a cyclical timeline instead of a linear one. I take breaks to honor rest and work to decolonize the aspects of my spirituality that tamp down on my questions. NAP Ministry is a really incredible organization, and the founder is named Tricia Hersey, and she writes all the time about the importance of rest. And this is what she says. My rest as a Black woman in America, suffering from generational exhaustion and racial trauma, always was a political refusal and social justice uprising within my body. I took to rest and naps and slowing down as a way to save my life, resist the systems telling me to do more, and most importantly, as a remembrance to my ancestors who had their dream space stolen from them. This is about more than naps. So Tricia knows that naps and this power of ritual is also resistance, that they hold us and they give something back to us when we are weary from colonization, racism, white supremacy, and hate. So one afternoon in early winter, I felt this ache that I couldn't put words to. I knew I was grieving. Specifically, I was grieving things I'd lost in the last year or two. I was grieving all that the pandemic took from us. I was grieving the loss of our dog Sam, who we had since before we got married and died while we were living in Vermont. I was grieving the change of other relationships, and I needed space to honor the change. So I went into my office, closed the door, and lit a few candles. I placed them on the floor and sat down, bringing strips of paper and a pen along with me. I took my time, letting the words come, letting the tears come, letting myself feel whatever I needed to feel. I was angry. I was so sad it felt like I couldn't breathe. But I was also somehow grateful. I wrote down the things I'd lost on the first strips of paper, honoring each one slowly, naming them to myself. And then I moved to the next pile of papers where I wrote something I'd gained. We lost our dog Sam, but we gained a new puppy named Blaze. I lost relationships, but I gained other ones, as well as a better sense of myself. I said goodbye to the season before, and I welcomed in the season here and the season to come. I cried more. I took deep breaths until my body's systems found their grounding. I honored everything that is sacred about hurting and healing and not knowing what comes next. Living resistance is about letting ourselves hurt and heal without knowing what comes next in a society that tells us we should shut off our emotions and always have a plan. That day it was necessary that I stop and engage with where I was. If I hadn't, I would have kept it balled up inside until it inevitably worked its way out, eventually in ways that might have ended up harming me and the people I love. So ritual helps us practice recovery and pay attention to the space our soul is inhabiting. Recovery and discovery both require presence, and more often than not, these spaces require some sort of ritual. Ritual, paying attention, being present, it's all resistance, and it teaches me that the human journey matters. So that's another piece of self-love, another piece of paying attention to our own story, and that's resistance because we live in a society where we don't know how to heal. I think that a lot of times, even our collective wounds, we don't know how to heal, and we don't know how to walk through it together. And starting with our own hearts and our own stories and our own presence is really important. So take a second, think about a time when you felt completely present to the life around you. I've heard some writers call this joy, one of those moments where your soul is completely content, where you feel one with yourself, with the world, with God. Try to think of a moment you might have had, maybe recently, maybe years ago, where you felt present. I want to talk a little bit about presence as resistance. When I was in high school, there were two classes, and I write about this in the book, there were two classes that deeply impacted me, and I knew that they were going to be part of my journey. Intro to Psychology and Creative Writing Poetry. The problem was I didn't really know how they went together. So when I got to college, I really struggled. I went into psychology, I switched to social work, I studied social work, but every time I would take a social work class, I would be taking literature courses. I'd be studying the Russian author Dostoevsky, and I would be taking all of these social work classes, and they just kept both. I couldn't get away from either one. I wanted both. I needed both, and it was this love for words and for people. And I kept taking the classes. I kept loving both, not really knowing what to do, and I think it took me quite a few years into my career now realizing that both of those shaped who I am today, that I still love words and I still love people, and I can't choose between the two. And so I think that it all sort of melded together for me, and I think that a really important part of that was learning to be present to my own story and to what I'm trying to speak into the world. And so I want us to think about presence. My journey with connecting to Mother Earth has been a difficult one because I grew up in a family where we didn't, I may have done it more when I was young, but then we didn't really do that. We weren't a family that camped or really went on outdoor adventures. I didn't start riding a bicycle again until last year when I got a bicycle for my birthday. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And I feel like I'm 5 years old when I do it. And so there are these really powerful things about reconnecting with Mother Earth as an adult. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. I think a lot of that's taken from us sometimes. And reconnecting back to the earth again as an adult has some really beautiful aspects of being present to our own story and to what our soul needs. And it cultivates that relationship. So as we think about presence and self-love and the power of our medicine, of our art, I also want us to focus on this idea of embodiment. And this is the last little piece I'll talk about in the personal realm. Embodiment. This is a tough one and can feel really difficult to grasp, so I want to read a little bit from the book for this. Hillary McBride has a beautiful book that I recommend called The Wisdom of Your Body. And she writes, "The body is central to our experiences, to our sense of ourselves, to our autobiographical narratives. The body is the only way we have to move through life. I consider presence to be the noticing and the paying attention, and I believe it is an essential step toward embodiment. Embodiment is what comes with presence, with acknowledgement of grief or trauma, and an understanding of who we are in the world." About 2 years into therapy, I realized that I love reading and thinking about how to manage my anxiety or my journey with grief. But I also realized that I tend to take the information only as far as it seeps into my brain. So I often do not in any real way embody the grief or the practices that I need to experience real change. Embodiment is difficult for those of us who grew up in spiritual traditions that made us deeply aware of our bodies, but at the same time ashamed of them. So I grew up in the evangelical purity movement, and through my teenage years, it profoundly shaped the way I understood my body, and coupling that with other layers of trauma that I carried, it led to what I can only describe as a near total disembodiment. So in my late 20s, I began to notice pain in my body, and I realized that it was associated with trauma from when I was young. Why does my stomach hurt, or my lower back hurt in certain situations, or why do I get headaches or mentally freeze up sometimes when I'm nervous? I was beginning to understand that my body is this beautiful, vast system of communication that I need to pay attention to. And I'm still on a journey of embodiment. As an Indigenous woman, overcoming the misogyny and colonization of the purity movement is resistance in every way for me. The embodiment journey is lifelong, and many of us will be forever learning to ask our bodies questions in order to listen better. Sometimes it begins with a deep breath, with exercise, with screaming when we need to scream. Sometimes it happens through dance or poetry or other forms of art. Embodiment is taking what we didn't understand or regaining what was lost so so that we can learn to be present to our own stories again. So I want to do something. I want us to lean into our bodies for a moment and breath. And what we're going to do is pair that medicine that I read to you, this idea, I am a human being, I am always arriving. And we're going to pair that with taking 4 breaths in and out. So when we breathe in your mind, I want you to say to yourself, I am a human being. And when I say breathe out, you're going to breathe out, I am always arriving. And so we're going to do that 4 times. So breathe in and out. I am a human being, I am always arriving. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. I want to share one last little essay that I wrote about my struggle with anxiety and embodiment. And I just want to encourage you, not just because you're here in this moment, but in whatever season you're in your life, just spend time with yourself. Ask yourself questions. Surprise yourself with the answers. Find out where you're going and why you're going there. And I think it's important to remember that we can do this at any time, and we can learn something about ourselves that surprises us. So I want to read you this essay, and then I'll be done for tonight. And I'll be signing books in there and hanging out, so please come say hello. I wrote this in 2021, an essay about how anxiety feels in my body. We have a river running through our backyard. For the average kayaker or summer swimmer, this isn't remarkable, but it is for me. It's remarkable for me to live by water because water is sacred and because I have an immense fear of it. I wrote in my book, Native, Identity, Belonging, and Rediscovering God, that when I was a child, I fell underwater at a hotel pool and was rescued by my older sister. I'm not sure if that one moment could have shaped an entire life of fear, or if it was just a general anxious fear of everything unknown around me. But my entire life, I've been scared of water, scared of drowning, scared of my kids drowning, scared of my partner drowning. So a month or so before we moved away from Atlanta, we visited a spot on the Chattahoochee River where people bring their dogs to run free and play in the water. They fetch sticks, they pee by people's bags of dog food, or of food. They run up to strangers and look panicky when they think they've lost their family members. For the dogs, this area is a giant water playground, and we are the bystanders who see them come alive. One day we took our kayak out to the river to test it on the current. Travis took it out right away, all around this small island and back again to us. I wondered how enjoyable it was, or if I would ever be brave enough to try. We decided to trek across the water with our kids so they could play on some large rocks, but I could feel my anxiety rising with every step as the water got deeper. So I stayed back on a large rock while they went ahead to play. I watched them, their joy, their wonderment, and I sat quietly with my own stress and my own want to feel joy. How did this become my reality, I wondered. But I watched them. I watched Travis teach them to trust and stay safe on the current, to move from rock to rock with confidence. I watched and asked myself more questions. I couldn't trust my body or my mind to get me there, so I felt stuck and uneasy. I was missing a moment, and I would never get it back. I'm learning how anxiety works. Sometimes it feels like a pulsing sensation. It moves from being faint to being so loud I cannot ignore it, and it causes me to lose sleep and breathe so shallow I can't get through to myself or anyone else. Other times, it's like a glass box that I am stuck inside of, and the only way out is to climb through the top. But there are magic things to do to escape, magic things that reveal a hidden ladder I can use to climb up and out to the ones I love. That day on the river, I stayed inside the glass box for a while. I watched our kids, grateful they were learning outside the realm of fear, and I sat still, asking my questions, talking to my own unsureness. Then Travis told me I should take the kayak out on the water. He told me that I should go around the little island, guiding myself through the Chattahoochee's current, making my way around the people and tree branches and rocks along the river's path. When I'm scared of water, I think back to a summer when I was 13 years old in an outdoor church camp. We were in pairs or groups of 3 and thrust onto a river with a canoe, assured that the short lesson we received on the bus ride to the river would be enough to give us a fun and safe adventure, and they were wrong. We tipped the canoe multiple times because we couldn't communicate with one another and had no idea what we were doing. 3 teenage girls who were on an outdoor trip, trying to manage their periods and trying to navigate a river and a river instrument they had never used before. I remembered. I remembered that the way I learned to swim was from my best friend Colleen when I was a teenager at our neighborhood pool. A teenager, and I could barely swim, like I can barely swim now. Maybe fear and anxiety are born in us at some point, and then they just grow and grow. And along with them, that glass box grows and grows taller and taller, until the top that we can climb out of becomes so far away, we barely know how to even begin the climb, let alone imagine what it feels like on the outside. We see the world go on and we stay there alone. But in that moment, I imagined. Travis helped me get into the kayak and instructed me on exactly where to go to get around the island. Are you sure that's where I go? Do I go around these people this way or the other way? Are there big branches there? 13-year-old me was asking the questions. Little me was coming out of the hotel pool asking the questions. Trust the water, he said. Trust the current, follow it, and it will lead you, he said. Trust the water, trust the water, trust the water. I said it over and over as I almost ran into a large tree branch, as I maneuvered the kayak to stay with the current's course, as I came around the island and saw my 8-year-old guiding me back. You did it, Mom, you did it. I was so fully aware of their love and my own box, and that day I nearly climbed out. I was so close to the top, to the outside. For a few minutes, the box didn't seem to exist. I felt happy and strong, like I did a thing that couldn't be done, like I climbed my own small mountain, like I found the magic that unlocks the ladder I use to climb up and up and up. Trusting the journey of our embodiment is seeking and living resistance. Thank you.
Here we go. We're going to continue tonight. You're welcome to go about your evening and do whatever you'd like to do. Some folks will be gathering around a fire in the field. And tonight and tomorrow night, it's going to be probably more tomorrow night, kind of a jam session. You can bring your instruments and people will be singing songs. And there will be storytelling. There are a few kids that are staying here for the whole weekend for part of the family camp experience. And you're invited to join for any part of that experience that you'd like to stay around for. Kaitlin will be in the hall for the next little bit signing books. She's got 3 books and there's a price tag on each of them. We want you to have her books, and if money is a barrier of any kind, somebody is going to take care of that for you. So what you do when you go and ask for her to sign a book is you can give her funds if you have them. If you don't have them and you want to take one or all of her books and have her sign them for you, then just say, Jonathan is getting this for me. Okay? And the book is on us. We have these baskets because all of those things that we're celebrating cost money. And some people are in a situation where they have resources to share. And so you can do that with these round baskets. The little picnic basket is a tradition at Greensky Hill to collect usually pocket change, but anything that you'd like to put in that basket goes to disaster relief, food pantries here in this community, and global disaster relief through the United Methodist Committee on Relief. Our treasurer, Mark Osterhaus, will gladly gather those funds and put them where they need to go later. And so I want to just remind you of this as we head out for the night. When Mark became our treasurer, he came to his first council meeting, and without really consciously being aware of the gospel text that says almost exactly this, he had a word from the Spirit saying to all of us, if you put my kingdom first, I will take care of you. And we, as leadership at Greensky Hill, took that seriously, and all of the things that are happening is because we took that seriously. And since that time, every time we had a bill to pay, there's been more than enough money to pay it as a church. So it's your invitation to participate if you're able. And if not, we are a guilt-free church. All are welcome, no matter. All are welcome at Greensky Hill. I see a lot of guests tonight that don't usually make our Sunday morning experience. So as you leave, let me just give you one more invitation. We're doing this again tomorrow. From 10 to 2, there are some Indigenous artists that will be here with tables selling their art. Kaitlin's books will still be here available for purchase. At 3 o'clock, she's going to lead us a workshop on the second realm and guide us through some more learning like she did tonight. And then we're all going to get together again for food and storytelling and music and Kaitlin at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And then Sunday morning at 10, we're going to do a little abbreviated version of that. We are going to have a 30-minute version of our normal 60 to 75-minute Sunday morning service. And please pray for me because I'm trying to make that happen. And the bishop is going to be here, and he's going to preside over a Native American celebration of communion with me. And we're still going to try to get all that done in half an hour so that Kaitlin can have a full hour before we have to get her back to the airport. So, but we would love to have you come. Our communion table is also open. It doesn't matter where you are in your faith journey. It's Christ's table, and all are welcome at that table. And if you want to just participate without receiving communion for one reason or another, we always provide a safe way for you to do that too. Okay? So thanks so much. Please be safe tonight. Bring back a friend tomorrow. We have more chairs to bring out and benches if we get more people. But this was just perfect in all of the delays and false starts and adapting to figuring out how to do this again after many years of not being able to. Thank you. Miigwech, go in peace and love as Jesus loves and serves.
All right, yeah. All right.
Oh, thank you.